as humans, we all have stuff to work on. I don't care who you are on this planet, you've got stuff because you're human, and human can be really difficult. So maybe you have relationship issues or codependency, anxiety. Maybe you just overall just feel stuck in life, whatever it might be. I have a solution. It's called the Adult Chair Workshop, and it's coming in 2 weeks. So come join me live and in person in Nashville, Tennessee. It is the last one of its kind. We are going to do 3 days of the adult chair, which means child, adolescent, and adult. And it is a deep dive into transformation. And you will leave learning so much more about yourself than you know today and living more from your true self. You will learn about self-worth, triggers, boundaries, inner child. We do a lot over the course of 3 days. And I promise you one thing, it is transformational. So I would love to have you come join me. All the details can be found at theadultchair.com/Nashville. The dates are November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I would love to have you there. Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair. I am Michelle Chalfant. So happy to be here with you today with an incredible guest, I might add. Andrew DeGregorio is with us today. Wait until you hear this show. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I love when I have guests on like this. You know what? I'm just going to invite you right from the beginning to open your mind and get ready to have your mind blown and your beliefs stretched. What you think is real might be different by the end of the show. Just saying. Andrew had a near-death experience, and wait until you hear his story and who he has become because of that experience. So, yeah. We talked about so many incredible things that I personally love. And I know if you listen to the show, you love this stuff too, which are things like, who are you truly? We talked about creation, projections. Yes, all humans do that. We do that with each other. How do you really find and live from truth? We talked about the ego. One of my favorites. I love talking about the ego. We talked about soul. We talked about why humans and how we block our own happiness and his story of awakening. And also, of course, I asked, can we all awaken? You know, we hear all the stories from Eckhart Tolle and Michael Singer and some gurus out there and, spiritual leaders. They've had these stories of awakening. Can all humans awaken? And if so, how? What do we need to do in order to awaken, to become more conscious, to become healthier humans, meaning emotionally healthy humans? What can we do in order to really awaken? We even talked about building a soul-driven business, which that's the only kind to have, I just got to say. When you can do a job or create a business that you get up every day and work at, and it does not feel like work, that to me is a soul-driven business. That is what I do. That is what my coaches do. We feel like we are on this mission to help heal this world. It is fun. It does not feel like work. And man, let me tell you, I work my butt off, but it doesn't feel like work to me. That to me is a soul-driven business. It is also one that is led from the soul. So we talk about that today and how you can also have the same thing. So as you can imagine, we talked about a lot of things. And, the biggest thing again is, who are you really? And we even talked about that. So I love, in case you didn't know, I love deep conversations. I'm a Scorpio. This is just what we do. And Andrew and I went there big time in this show, and he has a fascinating life story. And I'm going to tell you about it right now. And then we're going to jump right into his show. So here we go with Andrew. Andrew DeGregorio was 32 years old when a surfboard bashed into his head when he was out surfing. He was left unconscious in the ocean until a complete stranger pulled him out and saved his life. He was never the same again. After that near-death experience, he questioned his conditioned identity and purpose. He noticed he became incredibly present to the world and had never experienced this presence before. He took it upon himself to take a deep dive into spiritual practices, and this is where his gifts began to unlock. He's worked side by side with some incredible teachers and became a student at the Luminous Awareness Institute, which is a healing arts school. And since then, he's worked with hundreds of awakened leaders, coaches, and healers that have come to him for reasons that vary from aligning to their soul purpose, generating aligned wealth, deepening spiritual practices, developing psychic gifts, relationship and family support, and too many other topics to name. He is also the author of The Knock, an Unexpected Wake-Up Call. It is with great, great pleasure that I welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Mr. Andrew DeGregorio. So welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast, Andrew. I'm laughing because I'm so happy.
I'm laughing too. I'm happy to be here. I'm so excited. It's so good to see you.
I know. I mean, the energy between us is so strong. My mic just blew up, so I'm not even using a mic right now.
Totally.
I've never had this problem where my mic did not work. In what, 7 years of doing this podcast? Okay, so we have some very intense energy coming on the show today, right?
Totally. That's so good.
I am just over the moon to have you on today. And you have a very special place in my heart because you and I got to know each other very well over the last, when did we officially?
Ooh, I don't remember exactly the date.
It's almost our 1 year anniversary.
I think so. I think you're actually right. I think it has been a year.
Because I was so this is how we met. I was in California at my friend's wedding in November. And my husband was playing a podcast and I was in the shower. So we were listening to not together. We were not in the shower together, but he was listening to the podcast in the bathroom and I was listening from the shower. And I remember I got out of the shower. I put those really lovely robes on that are in the nice fancy hotels. And I sat down on the bed and I'm like, who is this guy? Who is this? Who are you listening to? And he goes, yeah, I don't know. It's so-and-so. I don't remember whose podcast it was. It was so-and-so's podcast. And I go, no. Who's this Andrew guy? And he's like, I don't know. And he goes, why? What's wrong with you? And I go, because I have to meet him. I'd heard like 10 minutes. And I have to tell you, I was just talking to my coaches this morning about it. And I said, you guys, people want to work with you because of your energy.
Totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
I could feel you through this podcast. I'm like, I am hunting this guy down. And I did. And I immediately was like, and I got on my laptop. And I was like 20 minutes in, to the podcast. And boom, I had messaged you. I'm like, I need to talk to you. I want to work with you. And here we are here we are a year later.
It's so epic. I love that. I love that share. And what was wild, we were just kind of talking about this, is that as you came on, we had our first session. That energy was epic during that first session as well. And just connecting with you felt like soul family, right? It was so beautiful. And I think I shared with you during that first session that I actually had an interaction with you through your podcast. Like I was looking for a podcast on polyvagal, because I was like, and I think I came across like a bunch of there was so many. I just randomly, of course, randomly, right,
Yeah,
picked
right.
the Adult Chair podcast, and I was blown away by it. It was so amazing, and I had an interaction with you before we even met on that call. So it's like such a synchronicity, such a beautiful coincidence, right? Like there's something just interesting about that, right? Then all of a sudden you reach out to me and we didn't even know each other. And here we are a year later doing this podcast now.
It's just like, yeah, it really makes me realize, I'm like, okay, there is a God, there are angels or spirit guide, like there is something else that's orchestrating all of this,
There,
because there's no way. Like it was so
yeah.
crazy that, and my husband, by the way, never listens to podcasts like out loud, like not on a speaker. He normally has them in his ears, and I don't hear him. So just the fact that I heard you, it was just meant to be. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm so happy to have you here. As I said,
Oh.
thank you, thank you, thank you. We have a lot to talk about today. I want everyone that's listening, please, I'm inviting you to like really open your minds. And Andrew has quite an epic story of really how you became who you are today. And along your journey, totally correct my words, Andrew, on this, but I'm going to say you had a discovery of who you really are. Would you say that?
I would say that. Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping today that you can share with us not only your story, but give us hope that we all can have this real like awakening and discover who we really are.
Yeah.
And you're going to give us some of those ideas today on how we begin that journey or
Yeah.
take that
I'm
ahead.
going to hop in and share a little bit about
I
that.
would love that. Yeah. Tell us about your story, because that was what I heard. And that was when I was like, oh my God, I just felt your energy. Like, I got to. So go ahead. Yeah, you have an incredible story.
So the awakening is a good word, for that was like a process that began to happen to me. Like awakening was this process, right? So how that began was I was in the ocean and I had a near-death experience where two guys were surfing and they collided, and one of their surfboards speared me in the back of the head. So it hit me so hard, my brain bounced and knocked me out. And I ended up with a traumatic brain injury. I had 3 bleeds in my brain. So at that time, really scary, right? That led into an immense amount of suffering, just like months of pain, suffering, all sorts of symptoms and problems. And I was with this company doing sales at the time. And I was also doing stand-up comedy. I was a comedian. So I did comedy and I was in sales, but the moneymaker was from sales. The company fired me when I was on disability. So I lost my medical insurance, lost my income, and basically became this absolute nightmare. So I had to really try to figure out, how do I recover from this injury? Because the medical industry, we have such an amazing technologies and we have an epic system, but there's a lot of problems in that, right? People get dropped. And I got dropped, and I was being prescribed all sorts of medications for this brain injury. People said I have PTSD, depression. Like nobody was giving me correct answers, and I was getting worse and worse. So after many months of this, I hit rock bottom, and all of a sudden I had this just intuitive feeling, which wasn't very common in my life at the time, of like, I need to know who I am, like know myself in order to heal, which at the time made no sense.
Weren't you like living on I remember reading your book. Weren't you living on a couch too? And like, and your girlfriend broke up with you? Like,
we that was a lot. There was
there was like
there's a
so much.
long story. Yes, you're
Yeah,
right.
like there was so much, what I would say, quote unquote, like negativity.
You're right.
I would have sat there and been like, wait a minute, where is God in all of this? And this is what we do as humans, right? When something bad is happening, we go, well, wait a minute. And yet we can say, oh, there's a gift, but it's like, you kept going though. So
I did.
okay.
I did. I kept going. And then, at that time, like, why is this happening to me? Right. Like like I was living in a victim mentality. So you're right. There was like, this is like a long story. The book tells a lot more details, but it's like, I want to kind of keep it short. So, but I was like, to sum it up, there was immense suffering. And I started to reflect on my life after I had that intuitive feeling, I need to know myself. And I started looking back at my life, and I just could see this repeated suffering and patterns that kept repeating, and these problems with finances, issues with relationships, the same repeated patterns in intimate relationships where they would just end in absolute heartbreak over and over again. And I started to see these things were like happening consistently, and they were like patterns. It was so strange, right? So I began to sit just with myself and just had this like inquiry, getting to know myself, watching my thoughts. And this is what I would say is the process of awakening, this turn inward, to begin to see all these obscurities, all these things that we think we are, all these ideas, all these conditions,
Mm-hmm.
all these negative thoughts that began to show up in my life. And I started to have deeper realizations, right? I started to realize that I was the problem, actually. Like, I am the problem. And I always say that that's a problem because I'm everywhere I go.
Mm. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
after sitting with myself for a while, I started to have that deeper realization that I'm responsible. I took radical responsibility for my reality and moving out of this victim mentality that everything's happening to me. Like, this
Mm.
injury was for me, right? It wasn't something that happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to
Mm-hmm.
sound maybe a little out there, that I somehow attracted that surfboard to knock me in the back of the head,
Yeah.
put me on this awakening path. Right. So
Yeah.
does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the same God, source, universe, energy, whatever you want to call it, that attracted the two of us is the same energy that attracted the surfboard to the back of your head. I mean, it's not like different. I mean, it's the same thing. So
I want to say you don't need a surfboard in the back of your head to wake up. Let me
thank
just make
God.
that clear. Don't
Thank you
don't.
for saying that.
It was one of the best things that ever happened to me looking back, but at that time was very hard, very horrific.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
So as time went on, I began to get really curious more and more about myself. I started learning about parts. I started learning about the inner child. I started learning about all these things that are happening inside me, and they were shedding. I began this like shedding
Mm.
process through this
Mm.
awakening process.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, I started having more of this, what I would say, magic started to occur, where synchronicity kicked up. Just like that synchronicity of like having this experience of meeting you before I met you on your podcast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Interaction, I find that to be, that's not a coincidence, right? All of a sudden, how many podcasts exist? How many people exist in the world? And I pick your podcast, and like 2 months later, we're in a session together, right?
So crazy.
And you hear
Yeah.
me on it. That's just so much magic, right? Things like that started to occur. And long story short, I ended up having this synchronicity where I was led to this woman, where
Mm.
she was an energy worker, and like more of like an energy worker, spiritual teacher.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know really what she did. I was kind of just at her house, and she's telling me about all these defensive strategies that we use to protect ourselves. These strategies we use as children to protect ourselves from overwhelm, where if there's too much happening in the environment, that our nervous systems can't handle it. And these strategies make sure that we survive. They're safety strategies, but they obscure our light, they obscure our truth, or they obscure what we really are. Because we get fused into the strategies, we get confused. We believe that these strategies are who and what we are. So we're these false identities, right? And she was telling me about all these things that I was fused into. And I'm listening to her talk, and I'm like, all right, this sounds like therapy. I'm just, kind of taking her in. She was super sweet, really nice. And she told me that I'm disconnected from myself, for lack of better words.
Mm.
And in this moment, she asked me if I want to know what it feels like to reconnect.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, absolutely, of course, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a wild experience that happened in this moment. All of a sudden, when I said yes to this woman, I started feeling something in my lower belly, like in my lower abdomen, and I freaked out, like literally backed away in my seat. And I was like, what the hell's happening? I said yes to this woman, and I start feeling something in my body, which I never feel anything in my body, just at that point in time in my
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
None in that. It's pretty disconnected from my body. And all of a sudden I feel this experience, and I had this like inner knowing again, this intuition, like this voice that was like, don't resist. And I dropped into it. Like, what I did is I dropped my felt sense of my awareness into the sensation. And then all of a sudden I found out what it was. It was terror. And the terror dissolved. And then all of a sudden this energy shot up through the center of my body. I felt it arise through my body and then exploded out the top of my head. And in that moment, it was wild.
Yeah.
That moment, I
Yeah.
felt everything everywhere. And
Wow.
absolute love poured through every cell of my body, just poured down through my heart, everything. I just felt love everywhere. And I no longer existed in that moment. And at the same time I existed, and nothing mattered and everything mattered.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that we were eternal beings. Like I was getting like this downloaded information, for lack of better words. And her and I just started laughing. We laughed for like 15 minutes, this woman and I. And that awakening process led me to this self-realization process. In that moment, I had an experience of the truth of what I am, or what we are. And it was an embodied experience, so unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Did not know this was going to happen. And after this session, my life changed drastically. I was never the same.
I'm sure. My God. Was that
Yeah.
scary for you when that light came up through you?
No, once the feeling of that terror dissolved and that explosion happened, like, and there was like a total disappearance of self, I guess, or the things I thought I was.
Yeah.
Like it went
Yeah.
into this absolute nothingness, but in that nothingness was pure love
Yes.
and bliss and knowing. And I could feel everything, like everybody, everything, the sky, the clouds, the trees, the stars, the universes, not just universe, like everything everywhere. And it was just pure love.
Connected back to yourself. So it sounds like the false self just like cracked away when you felt that terror and you reconnected with who your true self.
I think that's a brilliant way of saying it.
Yeah.
And the process prior was that awakening process, was that turn inward, where I began to realize that I'm responsible for my reality, that the inner world is creating the outer world. Like I
Mm.
started shedding through inquiry and like parts work, healing work. Like I started shedding all these ideas of myself. And when you see all the things that you're not, eventually you're going to realize the thing that you are.
Ooh, I wish I had my mic. I could drop it.
Just end the call right there.
Ooh, that was good. Say that again. So
I
everyone
gotta remember what I just said. I said, when you, what did I say?
realize
When you realize, so when you start
like
to go
who
into
you
this
are not.
inquiry process and you see all the things that you are not, and then you'll eventually realize the thing that you are, right? So we're
Mm,
lost in all these identities, all these
yeah.
small lowercase s selves, these
Yes.
confusions. We're fused,
Yes.
we're literally fused into the ego. And
Yes.
that's not what we are. That's an
Yeah.
important part of our system, but it's
Yeah.
not what we are.
Yeah. But we don't know it, Andrew. So we
Right.
walk around, you know, thinking we're this person, but we're actually not that at all.
That's right. Yeah.
So tell us how do you define what the ego is? How do you define that?
How do I define ego?
Mhm.
So the ego serves as a function, in my opinion, like the way I feel it. It's like a part of our system that protects us as needed. It's
Yeah.
for survival on the planet. Like for me, the way I see the system, the body, and the self here is that we have the ego, which helps us navigate and interact with others. But if
Mhm.
we can have that without being fused or confused into it, and I identify personality, like our personality, as part of the ego. So
Mhm.
even when you realize the truth of what you are, we still have a personality and we have a soul, and then there's this oneness, this full, all pervasive field of connectedness that we all are. And then we have our divine spark, and then we have the personality and ego. A lot of us are confused into the conditioning into a small part of our ego, so we're living as a limited self.
Yeah.
Like, so that's the way I would say there's kind of all these different parts of our systems, and we can then begin to transcend and include like ego, but no longer be identified with it, and begin to live from soul, connected to the source of where we came from.
Okay, hold on. I'm taking notes here because I'm making so many questions because I want you to finish your story. I'm like,
Okay.
wait, people are probably like, hold on, Michelle, keep going with the story. I want to go back because I want to know what the soul is, but let's keep going. I want you to finish your story because so you had
Okay.
this, so this was a lot more than Kundalini.
This was I would have to say, now looking back, my understanding was this was a Kundalini awakening that was a full Kundalini awakening. Some people have more
Yeah.
like a trickle and like an
Yeah.
ease, but some people more of explosion. One's
Yeah.
not better than the other. I had an explosion. It
Yeah.
basically, Kundalini rose up, and the energy exploded at the top of my head, which basically every structure that was holding me in these false identities dissolved in that moment. And I
Mm.
melted, or the thing I thought that I was melted away into nothingness, and I was resting as the truth of what I was. So it was a Kundalini
Wow.
awakening. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
And then, after that happened, um, I went home that night and I sat on my floor, and I looked insane. Like I had a big smile on my face. I'm just blissed out. My eyes are wide open. I'm hearing like sounds. I'm like experiencing life in this whole new way, like HD vivid life, right? It's so beautiful,
Wow.
unbelievably precious, miraculous, like the majesty of life everywhere. And I'm looking at the floor. It was just bliss.
Woo!
It was just beautiful. And in the background, which
Wow.
was really interesting, I heard this thing. It was telling me what to do, who to be, where to go. And it was my, like, what we might call the personality or ego. I was no longer confused or fused into it. And I could almost like see it is the best way I could say it. It's like
Yeah.
what was feeling and seeing it was the love that I am, was holding it
Wow.
as the preciousness that it is, the beauty that it is. And it wasn't fighting it, it wasn't telling it it's wrong, not trying to heal it, not trying to change it. It
Yeah.
was just pure love of this part of me. And I walked in this state, this so maybe like some people might call it cosmic consciousness. I don't know the exact words because so many maps that people use, but
Yeah.
you know, this state of consciousness that was not the normal everyday state of consciousness where I was just in the miracle of life. Synchronicities were leading me everywhere. I was meeting all sorts of people that understood what this experience was. And then this new process started to show up in my system and in my life where this new integration of this awakening was starting to happen, whereas my ego was becoming more healthy, I would say. I
Mm.
was living more from soul, like I
Mhm.
said, connected to source, living from soul. And sometimes I'd be hijacked by my ego here and there, but it no longer had its grip on me like it once did.
Wow. Wow. Okay. All
It's pretty
right.
wild.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking like how beautiful. Oh my God. Like I just, yeah. Anyway, okay. So then moving forward, you tell us like how did you get to become the person you are today? And you see clients and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, so like I said, I was meeting people that supported me through this awakening process because the personality side of me was in the background, like, what is happening? I
Yeah.
could actually feel
Sure.
that still going on. It was like I wasn't fully fused into it, but it was like, what is going on? Am I going crazy? What's actually because I didn't know anything about spirituality. I wasn't big into this world. I went from like a search to figure out who I am because I was suffering so much, and I didn't realize
Mhm.
it was going to lead into this it was such an unexpected journey, right? It
Mm.
wasn't something I was searching for. Very important that I feel
Mhm.
like I say that because I feel like if I was searching, that searching might have even blocked this realization, which is
Right.
interesting because I wasn't
Right.
trying to achieve it and I didn't even know that's what I was going toward. Because I sent a lot of people to this woman after, and she's an
Mhm.
amazing healer, an amazing person. They have great experiences, but nobody had the same experience, which confused me.
Mhm.
So for a few years, I was, meeting people that supported me, and things got a little strange. So like this was my experience, and I'll just name some of them. I won't go all in the details, but I started having experiences where I could see and experience energy in people. I
Mhm.
could feel their emotions. I could see blocks in their system in a way of like where they're identified or fused into false identities. I
Mhm.
could see where they're blocking their soul energy, their life force. I just started having
Mm.
this what I would say tracking started to come online.
Yeah.
I started to learn more about energy work, healing work. I started to like basically I was guided through this intelligent field, or the intelligence that guided us for you and I into this interaction started to guide me to learn how to integrate this. And I started to work with people, not charging at first, just free. I started to do some energy work, get to know people's systems, supporting them, and I started seeing huge results in their lives because it was like
Wow.
this intelligence was guiding the sessions and the energy work. So
Wow.
all these interesting gifts started coming online, and that's not something that's special specifically to me, because we all have access to these things. When we start to come out of our conditioning, we start to realize there's a lot more to reality.
Mm. Wow. Okay. I love this. And so now since then you started seeing free, and then you just started building a practice. So this is what you do for people now.
So this is where it got interesting. So I started to really like integrate back into a little more of the personality where it's like, all right, I need money. I have no money. I'm out of
Mm-hmm.
money. Like I need to
Mm-hmm.
pay bills. I need to have a life, and I wanted to have impact. So I did a lot of healing around money. I did a lot of work around this. But one of the main things that started to happen, which I find very interesting, was that I couldn't go the traditional route to start a business.
Mm-hmm.
Because everybody was telling me, oh, go online, do some videos, get some ads, put together a practice, put all these structures in place, like business structures, where they're great to have. But I was being told not to do that for a specific reason. What I mean told is that I started doing a lot more meditation, and I was being intuitively guided to sit more instead of taking action, which started to freak out my ego.
Ooh.
I
Know what that's like, Andrew. I know you scolded me in session about that one.
We can relate. I think a lot of us can relate, right? When we start to
Yeah.
feel this uncomfortable feeling. And like for me, it was like this old lack consciousness within me was trying to like go take this action to create a business, to create some money. But for lack of better words, God, just to use that word, was like guiding me, and my soul intelligence was guiding me to learn how to take action from a deeper place within myself, from being instead of doing. It was like doing. What I mean by that was connecting to like the truth of me and taking action from love, not fear and lack. Abundant action, not fear, lack action. And why that's so important, Michelle, is that what I found on this journey was that like one of the most important things that I realized is that where we source our action, where we're taking action from, really matters. Like, what's the energy behind our action? So if I take action from fear or lack, I'm going to get more fear or lack. And by sitting in meditation, I was stabilizing more of this connection to my inner being. So the action I started taking was from wholeness, and all of a sudden things started coming to me, more synchronicities, people, and organically I grew a practice that grew into a coaching business and a healing business where I support like awakening leaders that are beginning to awaken, like coaches, healers, entrepreneurs, and leaders that are awakening to connect deeper to their souls. Well, connect to their souls to bring that into business while being guided by this universal intelligence that we all have access to. And all that happened organically by not efforting. It was like effortless action.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And here we are today.
We are here right now because of that. Absolutely. And I'm on this ride. I feel like I've been on this ride that it's been like, I've been so blessed to be on this ride in this way, where like I have been able to sit back and really go for the ride, where I no longer, like before the near-death experience, like I used to struggle so much, work so hard, try to figure out how to make money, try to how to make relationships work. And now I just give it all to God and continue to take action from the heart, not just from the conditioning, so I can have an impact in the world that may be a little more positive than where I was before. Because that's what I feel like I'm here to do, is really just continue to take action from my heart and support people into that and do the best I can with that.
Yeah. And you do a great job, because I worked with you for many, many months.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
So, question.
Yes.
So someone's listening, at least one person I know is listening to this today. Of all the people listening today, they're sitting here going, okay, that's awesome, Andrew, but what about me? Like, how do I, without having a surfboard hit my head, how do I, and it's a journey. Even you had a journey.
Yes.
But how do we take that journey to awakening? Like, what advice can you give us to help us to awaken and begin to, again, crack open that false self and live or have an experience of the true self?
Yeah, beautiful question. So this is for everybody. This is not something special. This is like something that everybody has access to. One of the most powerful things, well, two of the most powerful things I believe that humans have is choice. Like people debate about free will and choice. I'm not going to get into that, but at some level, it feels like we have choice, and committing to knowing who I am and taking the action into learning who I am through setting the intention. The other most powerful thing is really having the intention. We have choice is one of them, and we have intention. Intention is very powerful. So we can choose to begin to awaken by turning inward within ourselves, making that inward turn.
Yeah.
And I'll give you some potential ways of doing that. But I think the core of it is having the intention not to fix anything, not to heal us, not to get better, which is paradoxical, because we want to heal, we want to get better, we want to feel good, we want to have success, have happiness. But if we try to do that, that creates resistance, and we're fighting with ourselves, essentially, right? We're trying to change ourselves.
Mhm.
So the idea is like more, how do we begin to love ourselves deeply? How do we begin to see the things that we are from a loving view?
Mhm.
So those things could melt away and we don't resist them and we don't get stuck, fused to them. So they begin to basically move away so we can, the light can shine through. Essentially we can find out who and what we are. And there's tons of ways of doing that. Like there's so many processes we can have. Like the
Mhm.
adult chair is a great process that you created that supports people into greater well-being, right? But if they do that from love, not from trying to change, that's the key. The energy behind the action needs to
Yeah.
be love and
Yes.
care. We can do parts work, internal family systems, right? You know a lot of these modalities, right?
We
Yeah.
do a lot of, actually my coaches, I train them to do parts work. I'm not trained in IFS. I know about it, but I've been doing a different kind. My parts work is more energy based. I learned it 20 some years ago and
Yeah.
kind of created it through seeing so many clients in NLP. But anyway, I've worked with parts work with you. Mine is similar to your parts work. It's more of an energy kind of based kind of parts work. But yeah, it's not, we don't go in as coaches in my program to fix people. In fact, it's silent. There's a lot of energy. You'd be proud, I got to tell you, but it's a lot of just sitting with and being with and saying less
Yeah.
and allowing the client to shift and heal.
I love that.
And uncover. And that's what I talk about. Like we are uncovering the true self. The true self is in all of us, but it's covered up,
That's right.
right? You know, it's like we're
Follow
wearing
the
a
back in the
costume and
front.
our job is to like take these costumes off. Like it's not who we are. And we, like you said, we exist in this world thinking this is who I am. It's like, that's not who you are.
That's right. That's
So
beautiful. That's well said. I love how you're sharing, how you allow, and it's like holding that space for people to unfold and release what they are. And that's really important because if we're come any modality, any type of therapy, in my opinion, or any type of healing work, if we go in it with the idea that we need to change or figure this out, we're in
yeah.
resistance right off the bat. Like,
Yeah. And you're
so
pushing there, and the
right,
client feels it. There's an energy of pushing, like, I'm going to fix you. It's like, no, no,
right.
no, 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 no.
That doesn't work. It creates that resistance, that tension, and it ignites all those defensive strategies in us. So if we feel somebody pushing, our
Yeah.
defenses come up and we're not going to open. We're not going to relax our nervous systems, our bodies. The tension's not going to melt away. So we can have that embodied experience of realization.
Yes.
That won't
Yep.
happen if we're in resistance. So we want to get out of the Chinese finger traps. You know, those Chinese finger traps that
Yes.
like when we're in resistance and we're trying to heal, we're in like, I like, for me, it felt like I had them on all my fingers.
Yes.
Like fighting
Yeah.
yourself. Then I realized, okay, if I love myself and allow and be with through inquiry or get to know these parts lovingly and have this inward view, like literally turning the inner eye inward to what's happening in my body with a loving awareness, things begin to shift naturally, right? With the
Mm.
intention of knowing who and what we are.
Okay, so let's break it down. I like
Okay.
to give people like really practical, like, so give us an example of someone that might be listening right now and they're like, okay, Andrew, help me to, like, how would someone do that?
Okay.
So they're struggling with, I don't know, pick something, anxiety, relationship issue, like whatever. Give us an example of what that would look like.
Yeah, let's say anxiety for a moment. Let's go with like a simple process, right? So there's anxiety in the body, right? Typically, the old way of dealing with anxiety, we run away from it, try to avoid it,
Yeah.
distract, scroll on some sort of social media, right? That was, or watch
Mhm.
Netflix, right? Nothing wrong with that stuff, but it doesn't get to what's actually happening, right? So we want to literally begin to shift our attention lovingly, softly, begin to notice, like turn the attention or your awareness toward the anxiety. Notice where it is in the body
Mhm.
and begin to gently just be with it,
Mhm.
right? Before you try to figure it out, what is this? Why is this happening? Where is it coming from? If we just gently bring our awareness to it, sometimes that is enough to begin to dissolve anxiety. That's
Yeah.
just one part of the process. If it doesn't, we gently could be with it with like a loving, open heart and ask, like, what do you need?
Mhm.
And listen and just wait. And it might not answer, and just patiently, like a loving, open mother with an open heart, compassionate heart, just be there, soft, listening and waiting. I'm here. I'm here with you. Even if you don't want to share what you need yet, I'm here with you. And begin to create this relationship with these parts by being with lovingly, softly, having some inquiry here and there.
Mhm.
That's one very gentle way of doing it. And the more we begin to do that, it's very simple. It sounds like it's almost too simple, but it is. It's very simple. If we do that,
Yeah.
these parts begin to open more information to us. We learn what we need. We begin to learn lessons and we begin to evolve. And then we can take that, what we learned, and create behavioral shifts in our external reality, in our lives, that might be needed from where the anxiety is coming from. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but if you wouldn't mind, break it down even more for
Okay.
people. So I want to like give us something concrete, what that will look like. So I have anxiety.
Okay.
And I'm going to turn inward and I'm going to get curious and I'm going to ask it questions. And I get to the root of it. Then what?
Well, let's say the root, like something that commonly comes up is the root of it is like people are not listening to their needs.
Mm-hmm.
They do too much. Like a lot of people in the, like in our country, we do a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
We overdo. So sometimes people are doing too much. And this anxiety is your body's way of saying like, hey, slow down.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that inquiry, and the anxiety is telling you like, oh, you're doing a lot. You have a lot on your plate. You have all these irons in the fire. There's way too much happening, and you're out of alignment with your soul. You're out of alignment with what you're here to do. Right. So this is where this anxiety could be coming from. So we listen to the anxiety and we really get curious, like, okay, so what is it that I need to do? I need to pause and slow down in life and begin to like shed some of the things that I'm doing, because a lot of these things I'm doing are probably distractions. Right. For me, actually, I had a ton of distractions. I had all these things I was doing to distract myself from actually feeling. So as I take away these distractions and begin to eliminate them, then I can hear myself more. Like, what is it that my heart is telling me to do? The anxiety will begin to relax more and my heart will begin to open more, and I'll get clearer information from my heart of like, what is it that I need? What should I do next? What should I do next in my business? Instead of doing 100 things, we do a couple things really, really well and have a lot of success and impact. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that.
And if it gets too much, people like you are coming into this world that are putting together these amazing models, these amazing coaches to help others that need support, because we need each other. Like, we actually need each other as mirrors. And sometimes anxiety, sometimes the pain in ourselves could be too much for us to even do by ourselves. So the second thing I want to say is like getting support from somebody is really important, especially people that are not trying to change you, that hold space like you do, Michelle, where they can unfold and open to who and what they are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And there's a lot I can say right now. But yes, I was thinking about I was just talking with my son the other day, because he does a lot of the same work that I do, and it's holding space, and this is what I teach my coaches too. It's like it's holding space. It's like a container of love that person can sit inside of, and we've just got them. We as humans don't know what that feels like. Like I was just talking to one of them today, and I was like, there's no fixing, and she was saying she was working with a teenager and the mother was, saying all this stuff. And I said, you be that container of love, and that teenager even will find her truth, and then you can guide her, in that way. But we're constantly giving our opinions, and this is what you should do, and this is what you shouldn't do, and why are you doing things like that? It's like that doesn't help us to tap into our true self.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely.
If we can help people tap into that true self, then we know how to, like you said, like I know what action to take. People will laugh at me sometimes. They're like, come on. They're like, well, what are you going to do next in your business? I'm like, I'm waiting for it to arrive.
Totally. Totally. That's so true. And that's what I do. Like, sometimes I get impatient, to be honest. Like, parts of me get impatient. Like, what's next? But that's the thing. When I found out, that experience of like that realization of like where you're sourcing action from matters, I wait and listen, because any other action I take, I'm not listening, becomes a nightmare. It creates more suffering in my life. Right. And when you actually realize the truth, I want to just say this, when you realize, like, all of us can have this realization, when we realize who and what we are, we know that we're one at the deepest level.
Yeah.
And then we can have deeper compassion for one another, and we can build businesses and take action that's going to generate love, compassion in the world instead of more fear and suffering, because our world needs that right now. We need to understand that anything I do is I'm doing it to myself.
Yeah.
Right. We're in a world that really needs that understanding.
Yeah. Talk about projection.
Oh, projection.
You
How much time
and
do
I
we
have
have?
talked a lot about, I know. Can we
I
talk
mean,
for 2 hours at least? I know. I don't, humans don't know. We don't know how much that we are projecting on others, and we're projecting all the damn time.
yeah,
So
so it's interesting. So from an energetic, I'm going to talk about from an energetic perspective, which is
yeah.
interesting. So I experience projection when, like, even in my intimate relationship with my fiance, like we project onto each other constantly, especially our childhood traumas, like our mom stuff, dad stuff, right? So it creates these barriers
Hmm.
energetically and these disconnections and these conflicts that make no sense. Like,
Hmm.
where are these coming from? I think you might be able, can you relate?
Yeah. Oh, no, Andrew, I'm perfect. I feel everything. Of course I can relate. Yeah, for
I think a lot of
sure.
us can. So it's interesting we can learn, there's so much to learn about projection. I feel like a lot of your listeners understand this, but which from a energetic perspective, when I feel projection onto me, I can become identified, which is like projection identification. Literally, since I've become sensitive to energies, I feel my energy configuring a certain way, and my behaviors, if I'm not conscious of it, I begin to reenact with my fiance her trauma.
Wow. So you become what she's projecting onto you.
Yes, that's
Get,
projection identification. We
how
become
about an example of that? Like, give us an
oh.
example of what something that she might be projecting on you, and then you become that.
I got to think about. I'm on the inside of that, so this is something we work with. So let me kind of go in. Let me feel that. Hold on. Whew, that's a good one. So there'll be a power struggle where I might make a request lovingly, and I want to just honor my relationship right now for Felicia and I, because like, so like when I make a request lovingly, if she's projecting mom stuff onto me,
Mhm.
where there might be a power struggle where she thinks I'm trying to control her by just making a
Oh,
request. And then
yeah,
it will create tension in the relationship where the request might not be fully honored. And I will do similar things on the other side as well, because we have similar um,
yeah,
uh, patterns, right? So a simple request, when there's a projection involved, becomes a attack.
yes,
And the behaviors what start getting created is this disconnection between us. We cut off the heart and we go
yeah,
into these strategies where we're no longer connected, and there's pain between us and tension between us, and we don't feel each other, which projection identification and projection then can lead all the way down to this disconnection, which creates attachment activation in the attachment system, which creates primal panic. And then more and more conflicts can start to arise from that. So it's this cascading effect that can occur if we're not aware of what's actually happening.
you just took the word out of my mouth. Yeah, it's all about awareness, correct?
That's right. So part
Yeah,
of that inquiry I gave earlier of like getting to know anxiety, we're beginning to build the muscle of turning inward. So eventually down the line, after, like a year or two of doing this, we build such a great muscle of having this introspection, this internal knowing of what's going on, that we can begin to see when we're being projected on, and we can drop the projection identification or have a
yeah.
resolution or a rupture repair conversation of what's actually happening. So increasing self-awareness through that inquiry process, like getting to know anxiety or working
Yeah.
with somebody, is so beneficial to get us out of these suffering loops.
I think it's so important that and thank you for sharing but to give ourselves a little bit of space and not react so quickly when we're in conflict. Let's just say, you remind me of something. So we were down in Atlanta a few weeks ago, Graham and I and my sister, seeing Lady Gaga. Anyway,
Nice. I thought that was
why
awesome.
my husband bought tickets for that, I don't know, but it
That's
was a great
awesome.
show. Anyway, whatever. I was like, sure, let's go. Anyway, so we're down there. We're meeting with some friends for dinner prior to the show. So we're going into this parking lot. It was packed. There was not any spots available. And we're pulling in, and I go, oh, Graham, there's one. It's right there. And he's like, why do you have to be so controlling? He starts like,
No,
yeah, like
no. Oh,
very like attacky with me. And I
oh.
was like, whoa, and I just sat there and I was like, what are you talking about? And he goes, I'm parking here. Why are you yelling? And I was like, I was sort of like, oh, there's one, like, oh, there's one. So I didn't say anything. This is what made me happy,
Uh-huh.
because the old Michelle years ago, I would have shrunk down and gotten very small and fell into shame or fell into my little girl and not know, lost little girl. And I don't say that with judgment. That's just what I did growing up, right?
Totally.
So
Totally.
I sat back and I like gave myself space. And he goes and grabs like, "You're so controlling." I'm like, "I was offering a
Oh,
freaking parking spot." I was like, okay,
yeah.
but I didn't, the old me also, after I went through the inner child, thing, years after that, then I'd fight with him on it. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Now I just sit and I wait and I go, wow, this is so interesting.
Mm,
Where did that come from? Like, that's
mhm,
not on me. And
mhm.
now I'm able to actually give myself space. Not every time, I haven't mastered this, but in that day I did. And he got out of the car and I turned to my sister. I was like, was that? I couldn't even finish the sentence. She goes, he was totally out of line. I was like, okay. I said, okay, cool. And I was like, okay, but I did. And then he and I talked about it because we've gotten really good at that too. And he was like, yeah, you're right. Thank you. And we moved on. But I noticed like my journey with doing the inquiry process, giving myself space, getting curious, space, curiosity, space, finding truth, staying in my adult and moving on. It's like, wow, game changer.
Yeah.
Like, not that I know that I project on him. I'm not perfect at this, but that's what just came to my mind. I'm like, yeah, I wasn't being controlling. Like he was being controlling. It was so funny. I was like, I just shared a parking space, but
Totally. Yeah. Wow. Beautiful share. That's epic. That's such a great example of that. I love how you take some space now and how much you've shifted, which is amazing, right?
yeah,
Those practices you've embodied really pay off, right? Instead of creating more disconnect, more suffering, like we have that space, that pause to then repair the rupture, right? And also identify when someone's being out of line where maybe a behavioral shift needs to occur, or they need to maybe look at what's happening because there might be a reaction to some sort of trauma, that there might be like a nugget of truth, but it's like
yeah,
there's something that they need
yeah,
to look at because it might be a reaction that's coming from pain that it's really calling for them to really have deeper compassion for. So your example is
yeah,
a great example of that. And I can relate. I think a lot of us,
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, it's a journey for sure. He and I together have worked really hard on both of us because, for God's sake, like I project on him, like I said, and I'll get triggered, and and then, but we're slowing things down is really key.
It's important.
All right, I've got a question.
Okay.
I've got like 20, but we're gonna
Okay.
narrow it down to one for right now. What is our soul?
What is our soul?
Real small question for you.
that is okay. So should we start the next podcast right now? What is
Yeah,
soul?
really. Let me hit pause.
I'm going to give an
Part
experience
two.
of, what do you say? Part two?
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about like, because you talked about, hold on, where's my note? You talked about the soul, the
Yeah.
personality, the
Yep.
ego, like God. There's all these parts.
Yeah.
So my brain wants to know, how do they all come together?
Yeah.
Because I know that I've had some experiences through meditation and other things where it's like, I've had that oneness, like, whoa, hold on.
Yeah.
And all the ego stuff fell away. And then, but then it comes back for me. I want to understand what this stuff is that we're like, what is the soul?
Yeah, I love the question. I'll give you my experience of it as well. So, because that's the best way for me to describe what the soul is how I experience it. So, soul to me, in the experience of it, it still has a level of unique identity, which it's all this is essentially that oneness or God or whatever word you use or the universe. It's all that. It's all God. I'm just going to say the word God just to
Yeah.
use.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's all God, everything, soul, personality, everything is of that creator, of that source, right? And that can be realized, that can be an experience we can have. And then the soul is an aspect of us that is that divine spark of God, that uniqueness, that journeys from what some might believe in past lives or future lives, that journeys from life to life. And I have an experience where I feel like there's many lives, and the soul is gathering and experience, and it's this infinite ongoing evolution of soul experience that is continually happening and ongoing. So the soul is continually evolving, and we all have a uniqueness there. There's different levels of soul. We won't go too much into detail. There's like over soul and all these other things that we can get into, but to simplify it, it's that unique spark that we all carry. And we can actually as we do this work, as we move over these obscurities, the body and the nervous system and the system actually begins to release these obscurities. And it's almost like the soul begins to embody more. It literally does. It starts to come into the body.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's essentially what we're here to do, is incarnate more of what we're here to incarnate all the way through and
Yeah.
live from a purpose that is in our soul energy. Because the soul energy is this stream that can flow in and become embodied more. It gets embodied, and there's information in that unique soul stream of why we're here. So we wake up to who we are, and
Ooh,
then we wake up to why we came. And the
like our
soul has
purpose.
that. The soul has that soul purpose.
What are some examples of our purpose?
This is a big question too, because a lot of people are always looking for purpose. And, I was looking for purpose at one time. I think there's a lot
Yeah.
of external type purposes we can have. The
Yeah.
way I view it is that our personality has a preference of how it wants to operate on the planet, and the soul has a mission that it's here to do. For me, it's more of a feeling. It's like waking up to this truth, to embody it, to be this walking transmission of open-hearted action, right? To
Mm.
awaken and take action from love, so it can ripple through the collective and reduce suffering and fear on the planet, and create new systems on the planet, so we can actually survive as a species with all the things that are coming down the line. Like, not to get too apocalyptic, like climate change and all these things that are about to occur. We need to wake up as a species. So for me, part of my purpose is to bring this energy through, this soul energy, to inspire others to connect deeper to the truth of what they are.
Mm.
Right, to embody that into the world, embody their soul into the business, embody their soul into the world. So for me, that's more my soul purpose. And my personality right now, the preference of how my personality is serving is like one-on-one coaching, podcasts, doing events, group work,
Got
things
it.
like that. I could be, my soul is like, I don't care how you do it. You could be an actor, or you could be a stand-up comedian, or you could be a server at a restaurant, or you could be an accountant. But the soul just wants to come all the way through. And then the platform of how I serve is my personality. Do I want to do it through chocolate or vanilla? I like chocolate. I'm going to go chocolate.
So the personality gets to choose how to fulfill the soul's mission. Would you say it like that?
Yeah, we have preference, right? So like, you are showing up a certain way on the planet through your personality preferences, and your soul, the more you embody your soul, and the more the personality and soul is coming together as like they actually can integrate through a healing process. As you heal, there's more power that you have a greater
Oh,
impact.
wow.
You have like spiritual power that moves through you, energy that moves through you. So prior to my, what I would call awakening and self-realization experience, my impact was minimal.
Mm.
Now that I've been doing this work, and the more I can, because I do a lot of healing work still, which is like still working through the obscurities
Yeah.
to embody more soul, I'm having a ripple. Like, more and more
Mm.
people are impacted by what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And all I'm doing is embodying more of the truth and taking action from love. And I'm actually having an impact. And my
Wow.
reality, because I've integrated more soul and personality, here's the benefit of this. When you start to bring that soul stream through, like my reality started working itself out more. Like, finances started to work itself out. I had more abundance, deeper connection in relationships, awesome connections like this connection with you right now. I could feel my heart. I can feel the connection between us. The beauty of life is still always there, and suffering has greatly reduced. Unnecessary suffering, I would say, has almost totally reduced out of my life, and that's because I've been connecting deeply with the truth of what I am. That's a lot that I'm saying there, but it's like everybody
No,
can do that.
yeah. So everyone can do this. This is what I
Yeah,
like hearing. And the way to do that again is the inquiry process, slowing down, asking, turning
that's a
inward.
doorway.
Huh?
That's a doorway for sure. I think
Yeah.
the way we
One
could
of
look
the
at it,
ways.
because there's like, the way I kind of view this is like almost like three pillars. We have spiritual work, meditation as like a pillar. We have like personal development, mindfulness, self-directed positive neuroplasticity, right, reconditioning the conditioning as a second pillar. And the third pillar is like healing work, learning to metabolize and process trauma, and being with
Mm.
ourself to metabolize trauma. Some people focus on only one of those,
Mm-hmm.
but if you focus on all three of those, like some meditation, or some sort of spiritual practices, plus learning how to do the like healing work, right? Or um, processing trauma, and
Yeah.
also taking control of your conditioning, like through using like neuroplasticity, you reconditioning places in the brain or conditioning. If you do all three of those together, that alignment is very powerful, life changing
Mm.
rapidly. Yeah.
So by doing that, we can really awaken and bring more of the soul in.
Yes, absolutely. And having the intention to connect with that part of ourselves is always at the core. Like the
You
intention
know,
is the power.
I remember I've read this many times, like when we're in utero, the soul kind of comes and goes and it's an energy. So it's coming and going and visiting. And then when we're born, the more of the soul is here. But then as we go through our childhoods and we have these false self structures, if you will, for lack of a better way of saying that, right? Like limiting beliefs, false self structures, whatever you want to call them. Does it squeeze the soul out and more the ego is here? Or what is your opinion on that?
Well, for me, mine was like my soul left the body. So part of my defense was to disassociate and like actually not fully incarnate. Some people might have a different way of doing it, fully incarnating in, and they have different ways of defending. For me, I was like, I'm out of here. I left like during like the birth process, like early on, like, I found this out later that like what you're describing, a lot of people have mapped out.
Yeah,
And this is like something that,
interesting.
yeah. So like for me, I had to work through finding safety on the planet. So my soul would actually incarnate through, because my defenses were running the show at that time.
Well, this is a whole other tangent we could go down.
Totally.
I'm like, I haven't
So many
heard that
things.
before. Okay, all right. Part 2 with Andrew in another show. Talk about building a soul-driven business. What does that mean?
Yes, that goes hand in hand with what we were just talking about, right?
Yeah.
So when anybody wakes up to who and what they are, um, we begin to source that action, like I said, from a deeper place, from our being, right? From our true self, our inner being. And when we're in business, like when it's like a soul-driven business, how do we bring something through that's of benefit
Mm-hmm.
to the planet, that
Yeah.
doesn't take away, that creates more
Yeah.
opportunity and can support others? And when we're connected to the source of the intelligence of where we come from, and that soul stream is coming through, that helps support the structures that we create, because we're infusing our business with that energy of love. And through the
Mm,
actions we're taking, and that ripple goes out, and the structures we create will have a benefit for people and wouldn't take away from people. We need a lot, my opinion is we need a lot more soul-driven businesses right now, with everything that's going on in the world, with the
yeah.
wars, the suffering, all the things that are occurring. Like, we really want to begin to create structures and businesses that support each other. And if we're not connected to our soul, we're taking, like, what a lot of people might call this lack action. I call it lack action, where it's
Mhm.
like we're competing for money, competing for resources, we're taking from each other. It's like a dog eat dog world, right? It's like when we're not connected to the truth of what we are, we just run over people without caring, right? So it's so important for us to
Mhm.
reconnect to us, to take action from there.
Wow. That's beautiful. What would you say to someone that is depressed? I'm thinking like their soul is not exactly in there, right? I mean, how do you exist though without a soul? Can you do that?
I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to the question, because I don't know if
Okay, good.
I don't
Okay.
I have met, like, so far everyone I've felt, I feel
Like I
like
understand.
I feel their essence. I think everybody and everything has some like
We've got to
spark.
have some sort of
I think
spark
so.
in there.
I
Yeah,
think
but
so
we
too.
want
I
to
mean,
bring more in. And it would seem, I'm thinking of people that I know that are suffering with depression or,
yeah,
PTSD or some kind of trauma.
yeah,
We leave. I disassociated all the time. That's what I did in my early childhood. I mean, even in freaking my 20s and 30s and probably my 40s, until the more personal work I did, I was better able to stay here. But I think it's just like leaving and coming and leaving and, coming
yeah,
and going, coming and going all the time, right?
totally.
But
I think
what advice would you give to someone that is depressed and they don't feel that spark inside? Like, what do you say to someone? Give us something that they can do to help them,
mm,
or just stuck in sadness or hopelessness, or they don't know where to go. Like, gosh, if
mhm,
we can get in there and feel that spark, we can start getting that direction that we need, right? But
yeah. I hate to kind of like throw like a general answer to everyone's situation, because I look at everybody as unique, and there's some crossover, and there's a lot
yeah.
of crossover. So depending on where someone's at, someone might simply have a block happening within their system that needs attunement or attention. And when that block or that obscurity releases, they reconnect back and they start to feel more whole. They start to feel like that spark, that aliveness come back in. Other people, there could be something deeper that we need to look at that is more related to their experience, like what's actually happening with them. But anybody that's depressed, anybody that's going through it, like I've had my own experiences of this with PTSD, depression through my own journey. I believe anybody can come back from it. There's a way, and finding somebody that understands how to support them or can be a placeholder or hold space for them. I think the key is like finding that choice point. I know it's tough when we're in depression to find that choice point of like, I want to know who I am. I want to figure this out. I want to, the ultimately, a lot of our suffering comes from the separation from God, right? Not
Totally.
not knowing who we are. This is like the ground of suffering. So if we are depressed and we can just have that intention of like surrendering to God while taking some action and really having compassion for ourselves and finding somebody that can support us, I think anybody can come back from it. Absolutely anybody. Yeah.
I like that. I want to know who I am. Just start asking that question, connect to God and surrender.
Yeah.
And take action.
Take action's key.
Action is key. Yes.
Surrender is not complacent. Doesn't mean just stop and sit. For me, in my case, I stopped and sit for a while. I did do that, but that was taking action by meditating and connecting deeper to who I am. And then I started taking inspired action from a deeper place within. But taking action is key. Don't just sit around. Like even if you're depressed, stuck in bed, you can't get out of bed. Like maybe the action you take is like taking a moment to breathe into your heart and asking for that support.
Yeah. Let your our heart, powerful, so powerful. We got to remember to go there.
Yeah, I agree. We are powerful beings. These bodies have so much technology built into them that we can wake up. There's so much potential. Like through this work, I've seen so many people wake up to all these amazing gifts, this potential that's locked inside of us. Like everybody has access to it. We've just been conditioned out of it.
Yeah, so true. Gosh, this was so good. Is there anything else, Andrew, that you want to share that you think we might have missed or that would be helpful for today?
Okay.
I'm going to have you back for part 2. Let's face it.
I love this today. First of all, I had such a blast. Like this was so fun. I love vibing with you. I'm excited for your audience. I can feel the listeners. Like it feels so good to be here.
I got to tell you, there's a great there's a transmission happening here. Like I can feel like, whoo. So everyone listening, I hope you're tuning into your physical body because I'm like buzzing.
I feel the buzz. I feel the buzz too. My heart is open.
Me
I feel
too.
energy. I'm like sweating a little bit, not just from the excitement, but I was a little nervous too, but it was more from like this energy that's flowing through. It's big. I can feel it.
Big.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
We should have people that listen, like hit us up on social media, because let me tell you, I think if you tune in right now, you'll feel it. The whole time I'm like, whoo, take a step back. Andrew, tell us, where can people find you and find out more about you?
Yeah, so like I think I shared earlier, like I didn't do a lot to promote on my business online, but I have a website, andrewdegregorio.com. So it's my full name. I have a book that you can get on Amazon, which tells all the wild details of my awakening story to the realizations. That's you can just get it. It's called get it on Amazon. It's called the Knock, an Unexpected Wake Up Call. I do have an Instagram, but I don't post really on it. I barely use social media. I'm kind of like behind the scenes doing all this stuff. But you can just, if you want to ask any questions or find me, just find me on my website, send me an email.
Yeah. And I will put all this on the show notes, because your book, there are transmissions in that book too. I was reading that book and I was like,
I've heard that. My hair was the book was cool. That book was cool to write with William. I did a book, which was the conversational book that you read, Michelle, and like having that guy like William Gladstone as a literary agent. He's worked with amazing people like Eckhart Tolle and other people, and he was a great guy that supported me with bringing more coherence to the story. And we felt it when we were doing the book. Like there was a lot of beautiful energies there. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast.
Yeah. Oh, that book was, I don't consider myself a very fast reader, but I was a speed reader when I read your book, because it was fascinating to read. I was like, every night, Graham's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm reading Andrew's book again. I was done with it in 2 days. It was so great. So great.
Thank you for that reflection. I
Thank
really,
you.
I really,
Oh, I
truly.
loved it. I
This was
loved
so
it.
cool. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I just love you so much. I'm so, so
Um,
grateful. Thank you for
love you
being here
too.
today.
I
Thank you.
love you too, Michelle. Thank you so much.
I hope you all enjoyed that show today. I told you it's a little bit of a mind blow. Yeah. And how do you feel? I'm just saying, wow, my body, my energy in the body feels so expanded. I have heat coming down my core. I'm curious how you guys feel after listening to him. He is a transmitter of some serious energy, and I just love this guy. So hope that you guys enjoyed the show. Please let me know how you like the show. I love to hear from you on social media. And don't forget, if you want to learn how to live more from this place, actually, that Andrew and I spoke about, which is the true self, the authentic self, come and join me in Nashville in 2 weeks. We are in Nashville doing the last adult chair workshop on November 3rd, 4th, and 5th. You can get all the details at theadultchair.com/Nashville. I would love to have you there with me in person. Okay, you guys, have a beautiful rest of your week. I will see you next week, seated right here in the adult chair.